Alright, so Hogwarts Legacy, this is my second impressions. I really love doing these impressions because it really just kind of shows how I can gradually change my perspective throughout the game and how I can voice my opinion on certain aspects and details about what I like about the game, what I dislike about the game, and it just really kind of shows my how I can gradually adjust my opinion throughout. So anyway, spoiler disclaimer, no story spoilers. I typically don't say anything about the story. I won't say anything about either liking it or disliking it. I'll just say that for possibly the last impressions or maybe just really the whole overall conclusion about how I feel about the game. Just for you know reference, I don't really pay attention to the stories in video games unless they really pull me in. And Hogwarts Legacy is it's just one of those games that doesn't exactly pull me in. So don't be surprised if I just don't really care for the story at the end, because I'm not really paying attention. So if you don't think my opinion is valid in that, then that's absolutely understandable. There are a lot of games I just didn't pay attention to story-wise, like Red Dead Redemption 2, Horizon Zero Dawn. I just didn't care about the story, and it's whatever. Also, there will be gameplay mechanic spoilers, definitely. Usually with these impressions, I will go over how I feel about the gameplay. As you can tell, my outfit has drastically changed. I went from a little boy in a school outfit with curly blonde hair to a dude with a knight helmet and long johns, and I think it just looks absolutely hilarious. I'll probably just stay in this outfit probably for a long time unless I just see something else I find funny. And also the AI has been reacting to what I've been wearing, so that's been fascinating. Like my teacher responded to it saying, "Yeah, you look absolutely ridiculous in that." So it's been a great time. I've really been enjoying Hogwarts Legacy in that regard. So, exploring. Obviously, there's been a major amount of time between the first impressions and currently. And so I went around trying to find how to increase my my attack output, sorry. Or input output, whatever. I don't know. Would it be output? Would output be better? Meh, yeah, let's just say attack output because it's going out. So, all right. Anyway, so I found some nice little secrets that the map wasn't directly pushing me towards. There were these little pools that you can dive into, and you find these little treasures. I found some gloves that really increased my attack power significantly, and so that's what I've been using. Also, with the outfits, you can actually pick whatever outfits you want and then change them to another outfit, and keep the same perks. So that's actually nice. That allows you to adjust your costume creatively and express yourself however you want to without having to worry about having to stick with very particular outfits just because you want high stats. This is pretty nice. Sometimes I wonder if if From Software games should adapt something like that. Would that be too out of field? However, the thing about Elden Ring is that as you become better at the game, you use less armor. So it just, I guess, it has its own dynamic in that sort of way. Bloodborne is mostly just fashion. You just wear stuff just for fashion. And I feel like it's just the same way with Elden Ring. Some outfits do have their perks, strength increasing, and stuff like that. So it's a very different system. It doesn't have to be the same, obviously. And I liked how it works in the From Software game. So I really don't want them to change because I like to go around saying armor is a scam, and that seems to hold up very well. I've been saying it for years now. So I've also obtained more spells. This one particular boss that I'm practicing in the video has wards. And this boss is very, very interesting, and I'll definitely touch on that at the very end of my notes. I want to touch on flying real quick. Flying is a blast. I love it. It's very nostalgic for some reason. I don't know why. I guess I've compared it to Spyro flying mechanics. Whenever you go into the little minigame flying segments, it's not like gliding in the regular levels. It's just the flying segments. And that's what it feels like to me. So my wife is also having a lot of, well, not, sorry, my wife is having a lot of issues with flying. For some reason, she has problems with motor skills in video games. I'm not sure why. She cannot beat the racing, the flying, the broom racing, whatever it's called. She's called me on the phone ranting about how she just cannot do it, and I'm like, just practice. You got to practice at this. I also made her really mad because we've been watching each other play, and so I decided to attempt the racing game. Now, here's the thing about first attempts. I guess it's considered controversial, but I don't really find first attempts that great. There is a lot of luck involved with first tries because you don't know what you're going into. You don't know what particular situation you're going to come across, and of course there is adapting to the situation. However, whenever there's just a lot of luck involved, I just don't really find that very interesting for some reason. Maybe that's just me. And there's a lot of stuff with Elden Ring and Dark Souls where people are like, oh, first try, first try, first try, and I just don't really see the point of and I've done first tries several times. And I just don't really. I'd never come out of it saying, "Oh man, I was too skilled." You know, I just I just don't really see why it's impressive because you mostly got lucky. And I'm not saying you're bad. I'm not saying you're bad at the game or anything like that, or you're just it's not totally valid. What I'm basically saying is that you're lucky that you were able to adapt to it. You could have walked in and had a totally different experience. And so it's luck based no matter however you look at it. It's mostly luck based, and I'm not going to go into percentages right now. That's a totally different topic I need to research into to find out how people approach boss fights in certain scenarios. I'm just stating just as someone that has defeated boss fights on the first attempt, which is something I don't really aim for. Yeah, that's something I don't aim for anymore in From Software games. Whenever I go in for almost perfection of the fight. I learn everything about the boss fight, and I master it, and then I move on. The whole walking in there and be like, oh, first try, it's not really that important to me, and I'm not trying to take away that thrill from anybody. If you love first try defeats, that's great. That's just not my ambition. I just don't really see the point. And so I did this race on the broom, and I was able to get on the first try. And I wasn't really trying. It's not like, I wasn't expecting anything complex. It was just a simple race. You go through the hoops. It also reminded me of Superman 64, where you just go through the hoops. And so I got the golden trophy on just the first attempt, and my wife just kind of looks at me with a really angry look, saying, "How in the world did you do that?" And I'm like, well, you just up and down, left and right, as you just hit the bubbles to speed up, and that's it. And I would have to. I'm not sure how to even coach her. The only thing I can really recommend is to lightly touch the joystick because you can't go crazy with it. Obviously, you're going to miss the hoops if you're just going to point the joystick all the way up or down, left or right. You got to lightly touch it. It's basically like driving. Just apply real life driving to it, and you won't have a problem. But moving on, I hope to see more of the flying segments. I find them absolutely entertaining. I want to see more racing. I want to see more treacherous racing. Something where you have to maybe fly through a tiny little hole that's just big enough for your character in the broom to get through. Stuff like that. Will they do something like that? More than likely, no, because they want to keep it simple. More than likely, this is Hogwarts Legacy. This is a game that they're trying to reach out to a lot of people. The only way for something like that to happen is for me to apply that, to go through a hole when I don't really need to. And I'm pretty sure there's stuff like that throughout Hogwarts Legacy, and it would probably damage my time. However, it would be interesting to see something like that. It's more like just like a show-off sort of thing, saying, haha, I don't have to do this, but I'm just doing it anyway, just for some giggles. So I'm going to address the heads-up display being disabled again. Particular aspects that I have run into with the heads-up display disabled. So to spell loadout switching, I had no idea this game was going to have multiple loadouts. And it makes sense. So currently I have 2 loadouts, because really right now, unless the game really says, hey, you need more loadouts, and maybe I could have loadouts for every single type of spell, but there's only 4 loadouts, and I believe, let's see, there's red, yellow, purple, gray, I think. There's either 4 or 5. I'm not looking at the game right now. However, so I have one loadout wheel for damage spells. So whenever a boss staggers, I unleash my fury and get their health knocked down. Then I have the other wheel for wards mainly. This is something that has to be constantly changed because depending on the encounter or the boss fight, like I'll get into later, I'll just have it adjusted accordingly. Sometimes I don't even bother because here's one thing: if an enemy has a ward shield, you can use that powerful special attack lightning move, and it just kills them regardless if they have a ward or not. And I find that very strange because you would think they would have some kind of resistance. I don't know if their defense is the same or not. So if anyone knows, let me know, because that's just one of those things. Like I said, I keep the enemy health bars gone, so I don't know when they're going to die or whatever. So if anyone has that detail, let me know. So memorizing spell colors and buttons. So with the heads-up display off again, I had to remember where these spells are. I like to keep SEO on square, Glacier on circle, stuff like that. For some reason, I just find that memorable. Maybe it's because it's just how I originally had it set. And I also have to remember what color their spells are. Like, I gotta remember that Glacier is a yellow ward spell. And so whenever someone pops up, I'm like, okay, well, they got a yellow shield, I gotta use Glacier. And so it's a very interesting way to play, and I definitely recommend it. That way you don't have your whole screen compromised with a bunch of commands that you could just have in the back of your mind. It's a good way to increase the difficulty, a nice organic way to increase it, and I highly recommend it. And the biggest downside about having the heads-up display disabled is unable to find the enemy weaknesses. I remember when I first started, like I addressed in the first impressions, I had no idea why the troll was being so tanky. And then I found out that he was mostly just weak to getting staggered, and I was really the only... I'm sure if I approached him now, I would find him a little bit differently. Just maybe... I don't know. Heck, I don't even know. With applying no rolling, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of knocked out in terms of how much you can do, because it was a very fragile fight in terms of no rolling. However, so I found out that also throwing objects at enemies is a really big, chunk of damage. So staggering and throwing things at enemies is very important if you want to get an enemy's health down. So, because using basic casting just isn't enough, at least for right now, because my attack output currently is maybe 85, and that doesn't really seem like a whole lot. So perhaps later on in the game, it increases significantly as bosses increase in levels and so on. It's just a little too early to tell. This one particular encounter that I spent way too much time on, that I eventually had to stop trying to achieve a no roll for, and that's one of the Knights of the Trials. One of the Trials of the Knights. It's like the big encounter before the boss fight. There is an encounter with the boss fight that's not that one. Is the encounter that you have before more SEO platforming puzzles. So the first half, I was actually able to get it down to a beautiful art piece, where I was defeating the middle knight first with my collection of spells, then going on and using a special to, using the special to stagger, and then using a few spells for the other big knight. And then, however, after that, the fight becomes an absolute mess, because the smaller knights are working basically all on RNG. And I'm saying this because I was trying to apply no rolling. However, no rolling just wasn't working here. They don't give me enough objects to throw, and that made me realize how important those barrels were with the armored troll fight. Because if it wasn't for those barrels, I could not do the no roll. It would have been too much RNG to rely on a no roll challenge. And I eventually just came to the conclusion that it just wasn't going to happen, because there wasn't enough combat aspects to for me to apply it, unfortunately. And the game's not supposed to. I understand this, definitely. And so, however, it just kind of sucks when I can't really apply the way I want to. But it's whatever. I eventually just came to the realization that that applying this to boss fights is what I need to focus on instead of just encounters that I enjoy. And so the RNG comes in whenever I'm focusing on one enemy. The knights do these drop attacks, and they also throw their weapons at you. And so this can become a problem. So whenever you're deflecting a weapon throw, they could be jumping on you at the same time, and there's just nothing you can do. So you're basically just having to run around hoping that that doesn't happen, and it just becomes a drag of a fight. And that's why I just eventually just decided to cut it out. One interesting thing, I'm sorry, I don't have any gameplay footage of this fight. I'm sorry. There's this one moment where I would remove one of the big knight's weapons and hit him with it and start attacking him to build up my cooldown a little bit more, and he would actually attack me without his weapon equipped. That happened. Sometimes it would happen consistently, and then sometimes it just wouldn't happen at all. But I thought it was really funny. I wish I had a clip of it, but I just didn't know if it was rare or if it was intentional or not. But just wanted to throw that in there real quick. Also, one big problem I'm noticing in Hogwarts Legacy is that they're not blocking off exits to these arenas. So you can trigger all these enemies and then run back and then bottleneck them. This is a big problem. It prevents players from thinking outside the box. I do it just to see how much it can be exploited. But most of the time, I'm just fighting them like I feel like the game should have been designed, where I'm just full throttle, just in the arena, being totally, fully involved. And it just really sucks. I'm pretty sure that these waving steps that's in this particular level, it was probably supposed to be designed to stay up after the enemies are triggered, and for some reason it's not. It looks like it's trying to. If you look over there, they're up, but when you get close to them, they lower down. It's very strange. And also, we'll get to the bridge to the boss, leading up to the boss. One quick mention, the puzzles are very disappointing with the Merlin trials and the main quest in general. I just don't really, they're not really well designed in my opinion. For one, the characters spoil the puzzles. Nowhere near as bad as Ragnarok, but it still happens. However, it's very light. I usually just ignore what they're saying because I have the volume down. So, just wanted to say that. Hopefully, maybe the Merlin trials get better, but currently they're just not really that impressive, including the main quest puzzles. So, that's just something that I hope, like I said, I'm repeating this for the third time. Gradually, I hope the puzzles get better. Now, we are on the boss fight. The one that's in the video, you should be seeing it right now. The Pensieve Guardian. This boss scared my wife. And I have to admit, it's very anticlimactic. This boss is nowhere near as interesting as the armored troll fight in terms of the no-roll challenge. This boss is very gimmicky, and I had no heartthrob. But I will go through how to make this boss fight more difficult. My main issue is the reason why I didn't experiment too much with the difficulties, because for one, it was very gimmicky, and two, you have to fight in basic enemies every time you retry the boss. If you restart from the last checkpoint, it starts you at the very beginning, before the bridge, before the platform, the whatever, and you gotta fight the enemies every time. It's like, imagine having like maybe a 2 or 3 minute run back to a boss. It's not exactly motivating, and I love run backs. I think I would rather run back to this boss instead of just having to fight these enemies every time. It just gets super tedious, unfortunately. So yeah, no heartthrob with this boss compared to the armored troll. This this bridge is incredibly glitchy. It goes back to the arena. Now this is actually designed properly because the bridge goes away once you enter this arena. However, me and my curiosity, I triggered the enemies and then walked back on the bridge to see what would happen. And the bridge totally freaks out. I have some shorts of it. I released, I think maybe a day or two ago. And it's very fascinating to see what this bridge can do with your character. I highly recommend it. Whenever you get to this particular point in the game, mess around with this bridge. It is fascinating what happens. So, addressing how the no rolling worked. At first, I thought it wasn't going to be possible because the AoE attacks. However, after just many attempts, I realized, oh, okay, there is some consistency here. One, with the orb failure, I didn't know that I was supposed to break the orb. And I would have learned how to take care of the orb organically, but the game spoils it for me with the objectives on the right side saying destroy the orb. I would have organically learned how in the second phase where he switches over to a purple ward. And so that's very unfortunate. I wish I could disable the objectives. However, I think they're part of standard notifications, which is what I want for whenever I check chests to see what I get. Because if I don't have standard notifications in, it doesn't let me know what I get in the chest. So that's a big downside for me. I like to learn things organically in the game. When the game just spoils things in front of my face, I'm not particularly happy with that. So once you get the hang of destroying the orb, after it kind of just does a little flash, you have little strings of something around the orb at first, and then once it flashes, then you can attack. So that was no longer a problem. Then there was jumping over the stomp attack, which I thought was going to be an effective strategy. I was like, alright, I get to jump over this and it'll be satisfying. Unfortunately, I take damage. I noticed that my screen was blurring up, which is what happens when you take damage, and I'm like, how am I taking damage if I'm jumping right over this attack and my character doesn't really seem to be affected stance-wise. However, I enabled my health bar and I did take significant damage. So I had to eventually just utilize the pillars so I could apply the no rolling challenge. I also had to, in order to avoid RNG, the phase 1 skip where I was overpowered because he only uses one ward orb in the first phase, which is the yellow ward. And so you can break it twice. You can have 2 yellow ward spells to break the orb. However, there's a chance he might do it a third time, and maybe I was exaggerating. Probably my first yellow ward attack would be recovered by the time he uses the third time. Uses it for a third time. So I think, looking back now, I really shouldn't have been overpowered for the first phase. Because I used 2 specials. I had 2 meters filled up, so I was able to strike him with lightning twice, and he immediately goes into a second phase because I'm just going an overhaul of spells. So looking back at it, I really shouldn't have applied that overpowering of the phase 1 because I think that my cautionary insight was way too cautionary. Now we're going to talk about how to make the fight more difficult. So, like I mentioned before, build the special on reset. Use the 2 specials in the fight before. That way you don't have to worry about it. Or, if you want to, maybe just go through a few orb blasts, and then, I don't know, that's where conflict comes in, because you're like, oh, I have the special, I want to use it now, because why wouldn't you? And that's the biggest problem about having to fight these enemies first, is that you can't have that reset. And when you ever reset, your meter should be drained. You shouldn't automatically start with a full special meter. You need to earn that. And so that's a very complicated aspect of the battle. The second adjustment you could use is just basic cast. And the fight will be significantly longer, but it will eventually get the boss down. And that's probably another thing I could have done. I could have just used basic casting when he was staggered. Definitely, but the fight probably would have been about 5 minutes, because you gotta remember, I am on hard mode, which makes, I believe that does make the enemy's health just a little bit bigger. I haven't really noticed a big difference between normal and hard, because I've been watching my wife, she's playing on normal, and in terms of just attack output, there isn't that much of a difference, so it's just weird. It might be a whole, like Death Stranding, where difficulty settings doesn't really seem to matter that much. And I'm like, why even bother with difficulty settings if it doesn't even matter? That's just another reason why I'm not a huge fan of difficulty options, because sometimes the developers designed it to where it doesn't even matter. If you're gonna make a hard mode, then apply mechanic restrictions, disable the heads up display, stuff like that. It makes no sense to make normal mode basically hard mode the same thing. So someone explain that to me. Am I missing something about hard mode? Is there something that's been removed or something that's made significantly more difficult? Please just address it to me. Finding the jump iframes for the stomp attack. There is a way to outrun it, but you have to run past him. So that definitely could have been something I could have experimented around with more. However, just I'll address this again, having to fight those enemies again just made it very tedious having to experiment with the boss. So I just kind of just worked with what I had. It is not a complicated boss, but I could have made it more complicated for satisfaction. And I could have been still practicing him right now if I just, was a little bit more patient with the first enemy encounter. No pillars. Yeah, that's basically the same thing as the last point, just outrunning certain attacks. You want to get those orb destructions in order to refill your special meter. I believe you can still refill it by using basic casting, but it's just another way to really bloat out the fight. So that's also just another way to make it more difficult. If you just don't want to explode the orbs and you just want to build a special meter by just with basic casting, and just use basic casting to kill the boss entirely. I think that's totally an option. But that's if you want to spend maybe 5-10 minutes on the boss, which is what I don't like to do. I like to spend 2 to 3 minutes on a fight. No target locking is also an option. As you can see, I switch back and forth from free aim to target locking, and I don't really know why I did that. I could have just free aimed for the entire fight, because free aiming is actually more effective than target locking. Because your character, when you target lock, your character tends to move towards the enemy. However, whenever you free aim, your character actually stays put. I don't know why. That's very strange, and something I've definitely noticed. As I mentioned before, the Armor Troll was a significantly better fight in design. A lot more fun in terms of no rolling. However, now that I'm thinking about it, it might be a little bit unfair because I feel like I didn't really apply enough to this boss. It's just, I don't know. Maybe later on we'll see this. I believe we'll see this boss again, and then I'll apply more restrictions. So I think I have another chance at this boss where it's not going to be as repetitive. However, I uploaded it and I'm bringing it to discussion because it's something to look forward to later on, to look back at, say, oh, this is how I fought him. I'm going to apply more restrictions, and I learned more about the boss fight later. So it's not a huge loss, because like I said, I believe he comes back with more orb wards, and I don't know why they wouldn't do that. Introduce the red ward, or whatever. Sorry, I can't think about the other spells right now. Is this too dependent on spells? No. I typed this in before learning more about the boss fight. He's not too entirely dependent on special spells. You can defeat this boss with basic casting. It just takes a little bit longer. Is this a heavy gimmick boss? In a way, yeah, kind of, because he just stands there. Trying to stay weak, I addressed that. I want to mention improving design-wise. So this isn't talking about adjusting the game organically. It's just making the fight better. So I've addressed more orb wards, definitely more aggressive moves. This boss could work if he moved around the arena. I think that would be a better way to make the fight more engaging, because he just stands there shooting stuff at you, exploding, and it's just not that interesting. So if he moved around, applying pressure to the player, that would be more interesting, and just less idling. Sometimes he just stands there and there's several seconds in between attacks, and he definitely could speed up some. That's something that hard mode could have done. He could have just sped up in between attacking, and it just doesn't make any sense why the developers decided to go with this. Jaggered AoE on the stagger recovery, whenever he comes out of a stagger, he explodes. It actually shows an outline of where what the area effect is going to be. I feel like this would have been better if it was Jaggered. Kind of, and whenever I say Jaggered, I'm thinking about how Morgoth's fight works in Elden Ring. And sorry, I try not to bring up Elden Ring because a lot of people get ticked off whenever I compare the games, but it's a good way to compare quality. So Morgoth has these daggers that drop on the ground, and they're jaggered. It's not a complete circle. It's just there are spaces in between, and you got to properly move your character accordingly to avoid. And I feel like it would have been greatly beneficial here. Maybe not just jaggered AoE. Maybe have it spin a little bit, just confusing the player a little bit. There's a lot you can do to make this boss fight significantly better in design. In conclusion, I will continue to play Hogwarts Legacy. I almost stopped because of my stubbornness with the night encounter of the trial, because I wanted to apply no rolling and it wasn't working, but I had to tell myself, like, I'm not going to quit the game just because of my own stubbornness. I realize I'm trying to make this game as difficult as possible, and I'm trying to do that with a lot of games right now. I'm researching Red Dead Redemption 2 to find out how I can actually enjoy that game by making it more difficult. And it's proving to be, that alone itself is proving to be difficult because people don't want to tell me what missions are the most difficult in the game, because they just keep telling me that things are emotionally difficult because of the ending and all this crap that I don't care about. And so I was able to pull out 12 missions from people. And so in the future I plan on looking at that's when game is drying up. I'm looking forward to other games like Resident Evil 4, the upgrade, moving out to You Suck at Parking. So is that Red Dead Redemption 2 difficulty adjustments is at the near the bottom of my list next to my backlogs. And so now I'm no longer I'm not going to apply restrictions on the basic encounters, and that's just basically just me saying I'm not going to focus on not rolling during encounters because it's a colossal waste of time. Because there's just too much RNG in terms of just certain attacks enemies have. And plus, it's just, it'll make the game more tedious and repetitive. It's just better to do this with boss fights. Just explore around and experiment with boss fights and see what's possible within that design, within that contained design. I will continue to upload funny glitches for YouTube Shorts. I've been having a blast doing that. One video shot up over, I think it's up to 2,500 views right now. People seem to like that, so I will clip whenever I can. I will see if my wife clips anything interesting and upload her shorts. And by the way, this could be my wife's favorite game. She's really enjoying Hogwarts Legacy. She usually doesn't stick with the game very long. She gets discouraged very easily, so I have to coach her through and encourage her to keep going, because there are ways to get through a game. Very consistent ways to get through a game, and I keep telling her, please do not focus on what I'm doing. I'm applying restrictions because I've been playing games for a long time, and so a lot of them feel the same way and get boring if I don't apply these restrictions. You haven't been playing games for very long, so if you focus on applying the restrictions that I have, it's not going to make the game very fun. It's like eating for the first time and pouring a bunch of hot sauce on it just because other people have. It's just not gonna. You're probably not gonna enjoy the food as much. You need to have a regular cheeseburger before you put a bunch of jalapenos on it. Before you judge the burger due to the just jalapenos itself. Jalapenos? Sorry if I'm saying. Now I'm gonna worry about saying jalapenos incorrectly. Why? One more thing. Why does Hogwarts Legacy work for me? For one, just immediately applying restrictions, disabling heads-up display is making the game more interesting. The game is not constantly holding my hand, I feel, with these restrictions, and it just makes the game feel great. It's not perfect, obviously. A lot of problems. The world is also small. It's not humongous. It's not, just obtuse in terms of just how much you can just walk through or fly around with. And heck, I don't know. There might be another map somewhere that I'm not seeing, but I love the format that it has. I love how there's just one main map and then linear sections. That works perfectly, in my opinion, for what Hogwarts Legacy is. I wish Hogwarts Legacy was developed after Elden Ring. That way, they could have taken inspiration from how Elden Ring's revolutionary open world works, and I'm hoping to see more from. I'm hoping to see get open world games inspired by Elden Ring. I'm really excited to see that. This game's also not cluttered very much. There are a lot of collectibles, which is really fun, like just gobstones and flying books, balloons. I don't know if gobstones collectibles, or it's just for that. I think it was just for that one mission. Sorry. Cleanup is actually not that unbearable. It's very straightforward. Buy potions, particular objects, and just use them, and then attend classes. The class is another thing that's kind of disappointing for me, because I was really hoping it would be like Bully, where you had to get there within a certain amount of time, and you would receive punishment. You would have to do something like mow the yard, like in Bully. I don't know what the equivalent could be for Hogwarts Legacy. I can't remember what a punishment was in Harry Potter. I can't think of it right now. And overall, a very charming world to be in. It's kind of like being in a Jim Henson movie almost, because you got plants that are making little funny, honk honk noises, and it's just it's great. Just little details like that just makes the world very inviting. And so I'm going to release another impressions. I'm going to release the third impressions after the next boss. I have no idea when that's going to be. It could be a week from now. It could be in a few days. It just depends. And the next one will more than likely just be really short if there's another one. It'll just me basically just addressing anything new that I have come across, or maybe my opinion has changed on certain things. But other than that, heck, I was hoping to keep this within 30 minutes, but it looks like I was able to keep it around about 40 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here. I hope you enjoy my perspectives so far on the game, and I like making these little impressions of how I feel about my journey through Hogwarts Legacy. And don't be surprised if there's a huge cutoff once Resident Evil 4 comes out. Resident Evil 4, the upgrade, comes out at the end of this month. And also the demo, oh heck, I forgot, the demo comes out next week. And I'll more than likely do an impressions on that, and also I will try to bloat out that demo as much as I can. Probably just do like do a knife only run or something like that, just to make it long. I love doing that with demos, because demos are extremely short, so finding ways to bloat it out is absolutely fascinating to me. So anyway, with that, thank you for listening, and I hope you were able to relate to my thoughts in any way. And if you can't, please address that, and we'll have a discussion about it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.